Yo, what's up, nerds? It's MTG Man, and welcome to another Deck to the Future? Aether Drift is coming out soon, / build your own precon, because we are sitting at about a $45 budget right now. This is Captain Howler Sea Scourge. Now, when I saw this motherfucker in spoiler season, I was like, this is my guy, okay? And then I saw his alternate art with the fucking shark cannon and the tattoos and his crew in the background. I was like, hell yeah, this is my kind of guy. So I knew I had to build a deck because he's just that cool. So Captain Howler Sea Scourge, 2 a blue and a red for a 5/4, ward 2, pay 2 life. So in order to target it, opponent's gonna have to pay 2 mana and 2 life. And then whenever you discard 1 or more cards, target creature gets +2/+0 until end of turn for each card discarded this way. Whenever that creature deals combat damage to a player this turn, you draw a card. So of course this deck wants to get a board of creatures. In this case, I built this deck around unblockable creatures so that we can just get in for as much damage as possible. And of course it wants to discard cards to bump up those unblockable creatures, so you're dealing as much damage as possible. They'll also be drawing you cards back. However, if you notice, it's whenever that creature deals combat damage to a player this turn, you draw a card. So it doesn't matter if you discarded 2 cards to trigger this, you only draw 1 card back. However, I believe you should draw multiple cards off of multiple instances. For example, if we had, let's just say, Escape Artist out, right? Escape Artist is unblockable, and we start discarding cards by using a repeatable discard ability. So we activate Aquamoeba. We can discard 1 card to Aquamoeba, give it +2/+0, and then it gets 1 instance of when it deals damage, draw a card. Then we can discard a second card, give it another +2/+0, and then it'll have a second instance of when it deals damage, draw a card. So we should be able to draw back to the amount of cards that we started the turn with, and this will keep the deck from going down to card advantage if we're able to do these ways to discard cards one after another. So let's just get into it. Like I said, $45 budget, and yeah. So Inti, Seneschal of the Sun, whenever you attack, you can discard a card. So this is a way to discard cards, but it also put +1/+1 counters on attacking creatures, and give that creature trample when you discard. And then whenever you discard 1 or more cards, exile the top card of your library, and you may play that card this turn, or play that card until your next end step. So it's just giving you more card advantage, and it's another way to discard cards. Plus, if you discard cards other ways, you'll still get to exile cards to keep going. Ivora, Insatiable Air. When it enters and whenever it deals combat damage to a player, create a blood token, which you can pay 1, discard a card, and sacrifice to draw a card. So it's another way to discard more cards, and whenever you discard a card, you put a +1/+1 counter on her. Riel the Everwise gets +1/+0 for each instant and sorcery in your graveyard, and then whenever you discard 1 or more cards for the first time each turn, draw that many cards. So this gives you a good example to do a big discard. Like, let's just say at the beginning of your turn, okay, I'll play something like Breakthrough, where I draw 4, then choose X cards in my hand and discard the rest. If we say we started the turn at 3 cards in Breakthrough, then we break through, draw 4, discard all 7, and because of Riel, we will be able to draw back up to 7. So this deck plays with a lot of discard triggers and also draw triggers, because we have ways to draw a lot of cards. Veronica, Dissident Scribe, 3 mana, 3/3 menace. When it attacks, you discard and then draw. And whenever you discard 1 or more non-land cards for the first time each turn, create a junk token that you can basically just sacrifice to exile the top card of your library, and you can play it this turn. So it's more card advantage off of discarding, and if you're able to discard on every turn of a 4-player turn cycle, the junk will kind of add up and just give you more cards to play. Wharf Infiltrator, it kind of fits in the unblockable category because it's hard to block. When it deals damage to a player, you draw a card, and if you do, you discard a card. So it's kind of too late, but whenever you discard a creature card, you can pay 2 to create a 3/2, so it's just giving you more things to do after discarding. Moving into the discard category, Aquamoeba, you can discard a card to, like, repeatedly, so it just gives you more options for discarding cards. Conspiracy Theorist probably should have went into the last category. When it attacks, you can pay 1 to discard and then draw. If you notice, this is before damage. It's just on attack, so you'll be able to get the +2/+0 on Conspiracy Theorist when you swing in with him. And then whenever you discard 1 or more non-land cards, you may exile 1 of them from your graveyard, and if you do, you may cast it this turn. Just gives you more options to discard, cast, whatever. Diamond Lion, discard your hand, sacrifice it, add 3 mana of any one color. The fact you can just discard your hand on instant speed. If you have a 5-card hand, that's going to give a creature plus 10 plus 0. This can kind of just change the life. This will change the life that everybody's at dramatically. Plus, being able to add mana can be super useful if you need to ramp to something. But definitely a situational card. Forgotten Creation could also kind of be put in the unblockable category because it's just harder to block with Skulk. But at the beginning of your upkeep, you may discard all the cards in your hand, and if you do, you draw that many. So you start your turn by, let's just say 4 cards in hand, discard 4, draw 4, and then draw for turns. You'll be at 5. And then, what, you give 1 creature plus 8 plus 0? Okay, that's a perfect excuse to swing in. Ghostly Pilferer, it has a repeatable discard ability, which is super useful. Plus, that discard ability means it can't be blocked, and it'll draw you cards throughout the game. Jace's Archivist felt crucial for this deck. So each turn you can pay blue and tap it to have each player discard their hand. Then each player draws equal to the greatest number of cards a player discarded this way. So this gives you a repeatable way to discard your hand, which can just kind of bump up your board to an insane extent, while you're also using other discard outlets or whatever during your turn. Because let's be real, you can pay 1 blue every turn. You can pay 1 blue every turn to do Jace's Archivist, and then still discard in other ways to keep bumping up your board. Magmatic Channeler gets bigger if you have cards in your graveyard, but being able to discard a card to exile the top 2 cards of your library and play one of them is just going to give you more choice in cards to play. Magus of the Bazaar, 2 mana, 0/1, draw 2, then discard 3. Super useful because you want to just keep discarding cards, and the drawing's nice too. Merfolk Looter, we're of course including looter abilities like Merfolk Looter and Seeker of Insight and Thought Courier. Just being able to tap it, draw a card, then discard is super nice for this kind of deck because it's just 1 more card deep, and it's also just 1 more plus 2 plus 0 and draw an extra card when they get in for combat damage. Cathartic Pyre is removal, but it also lets you discard 2 cards to draw 2 cards. Dangerous Wager discards your hand, then draws you 2 cards. While only drawing back to 2 can kind of be detrimental, this deck plays so much discard and draw that it won't even matter. You'll Dangerous Waver, and then your next card will be a wheel or something way more useful, so it's not as detrimental as it seems. Fateful Showdown, 4 mana, deals damage to target creature or player equal to the number of cards in your hand, and then you discard all the cards in your hand and draw that many. It's removal, plus it'll, discard your hand, which this deck really likes doing. Rites of Initiation, this is also kind of a win con. So for 1 red, you discard any number of cards at random from your hand, and creatures you control get +1 +0 for each card discarded this way. So at like a 6-card hand, 5-card hand, giving your board +5 +0, and then giving one of those creatures +10 +0 can kind of just lead to you winning the game, especially when your creatures are unblockable. Tolarian Winds, 2 mana, discard your hand, draw that many cards. Simple, good way to, discard cards. Breakthrough, so you draw 4 cards, then choose X from your hand and discard the rest. If you want any of the cards in your hand, sure, keep them around. If not, this is draw 4, discard at least 4, so it's at least +8 +0. Cathartic Reunion, you discard 2 cards, so +4 +0, and you draw 3. Change of Fortune, discard your hand, then draw a card for each card you've discarded this turn. If you've ramped up enough, this can draw you a lot more cards than you would think, because it's not just the cards you've just discarded by discarding your hand, but it can also be cards you've discarded earlier in the turn, so it can really add up to giving you a bigger hand. Faithless Looting, greatest discard spell of all time. Goblin Lore, draw 4, then discard 3 at random. While discarding at random isn't always the best, discarding 3 is going to give some creature +6 +0, so I would say it's definitely worth it. Illuminate History, discard any number of cards, then draw that many, and if there are 7 or more cards in your graveyard, you create a 3/2. You're probably always going to have 7 or more cards in your graveyard. This is kind of like a 4 mana 3/2 that also lets you cycle your hand, which is pretty solid, I would say. Into the Night, it becomes night, discard any number of cards, then draw that many +1. Not super great, but it's just another way to discard your hand. Pyretic Charge discards your hand. So you discard your hand, draw 4, and then for each card discarded this way, creatures you control get +1 +0 until end of turn. If you notice, this is kind of similar to what Rites of Initiation is doing, except you also get to redraw those cards. It's just going to be a nice way to bump up your board of creatures. Turbulent Dreams, you discard X cards from your hand and return X target non-land permanents to their owner's hand. So it's kind of removal. It'll help you swing in for lethal if need be. Plus, you're discarding cards, so you're getting closer to that lethal damage threshold. Windfall, each player discards their hand, then draws cards equal to the greatest number of cards a player discarded this way. So it's Jace's Archivist, but once. I just think it's a nice option to be like, okay, I discard 5, I draw back up to 5, give one creature +10/+0, and continue on with the game. Compulsion, so you can pay 1 in the blue to discard a card and draw a card. This just kind of felt powerful in this sort of deck. Being able to discard and draw over and over like this is just super strong. Connecting the dots, so whenever a creature you control attacks, exiles the top card of your library face down, and you can pay 1 in a red to discard your hand, sacrifice Connect the Dots, and put all cards exiled with it into their owner's hand. The deck plays with a lot of like unblockable creatures, so it makes sense to want to be able to attack and like gain value from attacking. Plus, it'll let you discard your hand later and get a whole bunch of cards from exile to possibly draw, discard, win the game with. Scuttle-Tide, it's another way to reliably discard cards. Sure, you have to pay 1, but being able to pay 1, discard a card as many times as you want to be able to bump up a creature of your choosing is going to be strong, I would say. Plus, 0/3 crabs are nice blockers, and they become 1/4s once you have 4 or more card types in your graveyard. Moving into like straight draw, we have Obsessive Search because you can cast it for madness when you discard it. Deep Analysis because you can pay 2 and 3 life to draw 2 cards off of its flashback. Flashback is really nice in this deck because then you can discard them without having to worry about not being able to cast them later. We also use Quiet Speculation, so we can search our library for up to 3 cards with flashback and put them into our graveyard. So you take like Deep Analysis, and there are more cards to come up. Arcane Signet, Izzet Signet, Mind Stone, Soul Ring, Talisman. I didn't do a lot of ramp on this deck just because I wasn't really sure how much it needed it. Removal-wise, we also have a Braid, Chaos Warp, Circular Logic, also for the Madness extent, but it's just a good counterspell. Counterspell, Spell Pierce, Conflagrate, which is a really bad burn spell. Okay, XX red deals X damage to Vias you choose among any number of targets. That's not great, but being able to flashback it for red, discard X cards, so basically just turning any cards you don't want in your hand into damage, plus being able to pump up a creature, I think is super useful. Witness Protection, and then unblockable creatures-wise, of course we're playing Blighted Agent. Blighted Agent is nuts in this deck. Giving it +10/+0 really isn't that hard. That's discarding 5 cards. So you wheel once, and Blighted Agent is lethal. Escape Artist, it also has a discard like ability stapled onto it, which we could activate it, and before we return it to our hand, we activate it again, and this is just another way to repeatedly discard cards if need be. Gudul Lurker just can't be blocked. Invisible Stalker has hexproof and can't be blocked. Mist-Cloaked Herald can't be blocked. Slither Blade can't be blocked. Triton Shorestalker can't be blocked. Moving into the win cons, this deck's kind of shaky on win cons, so you can play like Brallin Skyshark Raider, so whenever you discard a card, you put a +1/+1 counter on Brallin, and it deals 1 damage to each opponent. We have Glint-Horn Buccaneer, so whenever we discard a card, it deals 1 damage to each opponent. Laboratory Maniac, because now that it's at like 80 cents, I can say it's pretty affordable for decks. And while I'm not entirely sure this deck is going to deck out, if you notice, like, a third of it is discarding cards and drawing cards. There's a chance you could just run out of cards, so I included Laboratory Maniac. Psychosis Crawler, because it burns whenever we draw a card. Bulk Up, we can flashback it if need be, and being able to turn, a creature we gave +10/+0 into +20 something, it can just kind of be nuts. Isengard Unleashed, another card we can flashback. Damage can't be prevented, and if a source you control would deal damage to an opponent this turn, or a permanent an opponent controls, it deals triple damage. So you can kind of just win with your unblockable creatures with this. Summons of Saruman, we probably don't want to cast it for its main ability, but flashbacking it to 3 blue-red, exile X cards from your graveyard, and then you amass Orcs X, mill X, and can cast an instant or sorcery with mana value X or less. You're going to have a big graveyard because of the amount of discarding this deck does. And I just liked having, okay, I can turn all the cards in my graveyard into a big Orc army and possibly swing in for game. Mystic Redaction. So 2 and a blue, at the beginning of your upkeep, scry 1, and whenever you discard a card, each opponent mills 2 cards. Um, Whether or not you'll actually discard enough cards for this to come into play, who really knows? I've tested, and I never drew it while testing. So, Ominous Seas, whenever you draw a card, you put a Foreshadow counter on Ominous Seas, and then you can remove 8 Foreshadow counters from Ominous Seas to create an 8/8 Kraken. This card's here for 3 reasons. The deck does a lot of drawing, so you're going to build up Foreshadow counters fast. It has a cycling ability, so you can discard it if you need to discard it. And it creates Krakens, and our main guy's a shark, so it just kind of fit like this fun little sea thing. And I really like Ominous Seas in this deck. Land-wise, we're playing Command Tower, Desolate Lighthouse, because it's another way to discard cards, Ferris Lake, Forgotten Cave. We're also playing another cycling land, because discarding is good in this deck. So you might as well. It'll give you one more option. At worst, you play it as a tap land. You know? Frostboil Snarl, Islands, Lonely Sandbars, the other cycling land, and a Mountains. And this is a card I really wanted to put in the deck, but I couldn't fit per budget. This is Attunement. So it's 2 and a blue for an enchantment, and then you can return it to your hand to draw 3 and then discard 4. And I really thought about this, and this being repeatable is super strong in this kind of deck, because, okay, I play it once for 2 and a blue. Then I return it to my hand, draw 3, discard 4. So now a creature has +8/+0. Then I can play it again, return it to my hand, and just keep doing that. And eventually, sure, I'll probably have to discard it to its own ability, because you draw 3, and then it's in your hand, so it's the 4th card. But as long as you have 1 extra card, you can just keep doing that over and over. And it seems super powerful. At $6, it was either this or Jace's Archivist, and Jace's Archivist just seemed better. Moving into a test game, I think we keep this hand. I actually really like this hand. So we go like Mountain, pass. Theoretically, you really want an unblockable creature within your first 3 turns, so then Howler can hit the battlefield and just start acting on that shit. But we're kind of doing fine without it, because we can go Mountain into a Glint-Horn Buccaneer, so now whenever we discard a card, it'll deal 1 damage to each opponent. And then whenever we discard a card, we'll put a +1/+1 counter on Ivora, which we would have created a blood token when she enters, and we'll create now that she attacks. Go to turn 4, Soul Ring, Commander, attack again, so now we have 3 blood. And then at this point, we can, run out Jace's Archivist for next turn. We could probably sacrifice the 3 blood to, discard a card, draw a card, discard a card, draw a card, discard a card, draw a card. So we're at 0 blood, but now, because of Captain Howler, we have a... She got 1 every time we discarded a card, so she's at, 5, and then +6/+0 from Captain Howler, and because those discards were separate instances, when she deals combat damage, we'll get to draw 3 cards. So we would swing in for 11, plus she has Trample. Draw 3, go to turn 6, and on turn 6, we play a land drop, and then we just start, you see what I mean, right? We go, okay, actually, not even okay, right here. We go into the night, discard 6 cards, so we can give Ivora +12/+0 and Trample, and then because we discarded 6 cards, she'll get 6 +1/+1 counters, and we'll deal 6 damage to each opponent, and then we would draw back up to 6, and then we would activate Jace's Archivist to discard 6 cards, and then she would go up another 6, so she's at, +24/24, and she's gotten counters every time we've discarded a card, and we've dealt 12 damage with Glint-Horn Buccaneer this turn. Needless to say, this deck looks nuts, okay? And I really like Captain Howler as a commander. He's a pirate, but it doesn't focus... I feel like a lot of pirates get focused on to, either treasure, pirate typal, or, artifacts. I guess artifacts is kind of the same as treasure, but I really like Captain Howler doing his own thing. I really like that the deck kind of seems good even without Captain Howler. Like, yes, okay, that game I just showed off, you probably could have swung in and won because of Captain Howler, right? But even without him, it has a strong, like, backing, is how I would put it, which sounds just weird, but, like, to play a second game, we go, like, Island, we play a Mountain, we'll play a Talisman of Creativity. Now, at this point, I actually think we run out Jace's Archivist before we run out our commander. And then we pass. And then, like, look. It's so... Okay. Actually, no, you have to wait one turn. I don't like that. We'll play a Gudul Lurker. We'll play our commander. We go to turn 5, okay? And then we go, bam, Jace's Archivist. Discard our hand. So Gudul Lurker will get +8/+0. And then we draw equal to the greatest number of cards discarded this way. So at least 4. So we draw at least 4 cards. And then we say, gee, Gudul Lurker got +8 plus... Wait, is it +8/+0? Yeah, +8/+0. So at this point, we can just... What's that? Double its power, so it's a 16... Sorry, not 16, because it's 1/1 already. So it's an 18-1 unblockable creature. And then we can just kind of swing in if we want, or we play a Forgotten Creation and, like, just wait, swing for 8, draw, or swing for 9, draw a card. And then at the beginning of our turn, because of Forgotten Creation, before we draw for turn, we can discard our hand, give Gudul Lurker +8/+0, draw back to 4 because of Forgotten Creation, draw for turn, play a Breakthrough and keep 1 card in hand, I guess. Like, so we would draw 3. Those would also get discarded. Shit. I played that, like, really wrong. So Gudul Lurker gets another +10/+0 and then swings in. Like, this deck feels nuts. That's what I'm saying. I could have done more with Archivist. I forgot. But this deck feels absolutely nuts. The amount of power it can put out. And it doesn't even really rely on commander damage, which I can appreciate because I think commander damage is kind of annoying sometimes, I'm going to be honest. But being able to bump up a creature that much so fast is really entertaining to me. This may be one of my new favorite decks, at least at the moment. That being said, this has been MTG Man. Let me be so real with y'all. I've been working on some decks. I've been working on, like, this Arna. I want to build an Arna Kennerode, where whenever you would be creating whenever a modified creature you control attacks, double the number of each kind of counter on it, and then for each non-token permanent attached to it, create a token that's a copy of that permanent attached to that creature. So my idea is to build this with legendary artifacts so that when those artifacts enter, they're immediately sent to the graveyard, and you just burn your opponents out with, like, a Disciple of the Vault or, like, a Marionette Master. But I'm having a really hard time, like, trying to figure out how that deck would even work. And then I've got this, like, Azlazak experience counter Typal, where we use all of those random commanders that use experience counters, and because they all take the same kind of counter, they could kind of, like, work together. So that's been, like, brewing in my mind. I've also been thinking about putting together a MTG Man. I thought about calling it, like, the MTG Maniac fucking podcast, because I think it would be funny to have a podcast, but, like, I don't really know if I have the talking skills for a podcast. I kind of have the idea for 2 episodes put together. I want to do one on, like, underrated, like, kindreds, like, underrated creature types that have, like, a creature type synergy thing going on. And just, like, highlighting cards that are underused, and then different synergies that can be used to make those certain kindred strategies good. And I also wanted to do one on the definitive insect commander, as in what commander really works best with insects, because there's a lot of options out there. However, I'm not really sure a podcast is the best idea. I mean, I have a lot going on in life. I'm in college. I have to work, things like that. So it's really hard to figure out, but there will be more from MTG Man in the future. I'll show off some of my other stuff. I don't fucking know, dog. Um, that being said, this has been MTG Man signing off. Y'all are wonderful people, all 92 of you. It's insane to me because, like, I'll look at some of your channels and you're following, like, the Command Zone and the Professor, and I feel honored. I know I'm not seen, among their ranks, but the fact that somebody who cares about the hobby and who, um, listens to someone I look up to like that, but also listens to me, it's really special. I feel honored to have an audience. I mean, the fact that there's 90 people who will listen to me ramble about my stupid nerd niche card hobby games, there's something really special about that. Do I think we'll hit 100? Fuck yeah, I think we'll hit 100. We're amazing. We don't have a set community. We don't really have inside jokes, but you know, I think there's something nice about having people. Um, but yeah, this is MTG Man signing off. I'll see you in the next one. Peace, yo. Bye.